And so in that moment also, I was like, why am I attracting this? Why am I experiencing this again? Because 2 times in a row,
it's even a countdown. Hi, welcome to The Secret of My Success, the podcast where we explore what it means to live a fulfilling life. I am your host, Erin Currin. You will notice that today I am in person with my guest, the amazing Danielle Francine. Danielle, why don't you say hi to our audience and tell them a little bit about yourself?
hello, and thank you for having me. I'm super excited to be here. My name is Danielle Francine, and I'm a body transformation expert. So I work with women, primarily nutrition, training, really helping them step into their desired results, but not only physical, but mentally, emotionally, spiritually, looking for the freedom in all areas. So, with that, freedom is one of my core values. And so I am big into personal growth, spirituality, very deep into that, and really just looking for any way that I can create more freedom in my life in all facets.
That's amazing. It's a really powerful place to be. Mm-hmm. And as you know, I just recently left my full-time job to work on my podcast and my coaching practice full-time. So freedom really resonates with me.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a powerful place to stand when you get to do what you enjoy doing all the time.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And really, I feel like in the freedom, like when you are creating your own freedom or breaking free of things that bring you more freedom, it's just, there's nothing else like that, I feel.
I agree. And I'm going to be experiencing exactly what that's like the more we go through this. So you guys all get to see the transformation as we travel on this journey. Mm-hmm. And I will say that while, I've mentioned before that I've been working on starting a podcast for 5 to 10 years, but it was being on her podcast last October that really showed me exactly what I was looking to create, because I had so many ideas about what it should be. And when you and I just basically we were like, we have these great conversations at coffee shops. Why don't we just record one and put it out there? And I thought, well, why not? And then when I saw the result, I was so lit up and it was so magical that I was like, fuck, I can do that.
And how fun too.
Yes.
And just the conversation, the freedom in the conversation, and to share that with people. I feel like that also brings freedom to other people. The realizations that we've had, the work or the things that we do in our podcast that we did to fix ourselves, right? Our light bulb moments.
Yes. Yeah. The episode was about chasing that fix by doing personal development courses, personal course on course on course, and just chasing your tail basically, because they're just going to keep you coming back. If you're not doing the work when you're leaving a classroom, trust me, you're not going to get anywhere. Well, that actually leads us to, I'd like to ask you about your life and your life experience, because many of our guests share a challenge or an experience that they've had that really had them shift their context for life. And so what would you like to share with our audience about what comes up for you?
So really the biggest shift that I've had in my life, is it the biggest shift? I think probably the biggest shift that I've had in my life to date it was leaving my marriage, getting a divorce. And that was about 2 years ago. Actually, before that, the marriage had ended before that, and we were both still in it. But that time was we'll call it a rock bottom, right? Because I feel like everybody has a rock bottom moment, or maybe I thought that I had a rock bottom moment before, until I was in the middle of that. And it really just, it shifted the way that I saw myself. It shifted the way that I really approached life or approached relationship, the way that I cared for myself, self-love. And leaving that relationship, I had this moment where at that time, my husband, so he was still my husband at the time, I had told him, like, you got to go, like, you got to get out of the house. I wasn't sure if I was going to move back to New Jersey, that's where I'm from, or if I was going to stay in Florida. I have no family here. So I was driving back to the house, and my realization was, you're stepping into your worthiness. You've been in this place for so many years with this man, and having the same thing happen over and over. We're not close. We're not talking. We're not connected, like, really in any way. So, like, why was I staying there? Because I didn't think that I was worthy, and I was trying to prove that I was worthy. Like, I can get this man to love me the way that I want. I can get the affection that I want. I can get the communication that I want. And really, it was the opposite. It was like, no, actually, you're proving that you're worthy by leaving the relationship that is not, it's not serving you. So why would you stay? Like, you've stayed long enough.
Yeah. That's super powerful, because it's like we watch all of these Disney princess movies and all of these happily ever after things. And I remember one time many years ago, I went to a Buddhist conference, and one of the senior leaders was saying, for one person, staying married is the victory, and for another person, getting the divorce is the victory. And so we have these unspoken expectations that, like, we believe we're supposed to measure up to. And it sounds like you ran into one of those, or several.
Oh, yeah. And really, I mean, one of the biggest ones for me was my core beliefs that were instilled in me as a child in the church. You don't get divorced. Like, it doesn't matter what's happening in the marriage. Doesn't matter if somebody's cheating on you, or, like, you stay and you work it out. Like, you, like, no.
Yeah.
And so working through that during that time and realizing that I had that belief, and that was a part of the reason of why I did stay as long as I stayed, was really tough, right? You would think it would be like, oh, well, like, I'm not even a practicing Christian anymore in that way. Why can't I just let it go? It's like we have these things so deep inside of us, and sometimes we don't even realize how deep it is or what's there.
Right. Well, and that, I think, speaks to the idea if you've ever seen those memes on Facebook or the pictures in personal development courses where they show the iceberg. And there's the little bit above the water, which is your conscious mind, and then the whole big chunk underneath that's your subconscious. And that's where all of these dragons reside. Like, all of those beliefs that you picked up when you were a child are hiding down those dark hallways, and they don't pop up until they think that we need protecting. And in that moment, it's not something that can be reasoned with. It's not something that you can negotiate with or you can ask questions about, because when that particular idea, belief, or philosophy shows up, it's ready to fight because it needs to protect.
Absolutely.
And so, like, in my experience, I have no access to understanding what's going on when I'm in that fight or flight kind of space. So then, like, how did you, because, well, I guess the question is, how did you come to this realization for yourself? Because many people are like, well, am I the person who should stay married, or am I the person who should get divorced? Because there's a story that I heard when I first started practicing Nichiren Buddhism of this woman who was so miserable in her marriage that she sat at the altar every day and chanted passionately for her husband to die. And I found out about a month ago that is actually a true story. And I was told who it was, and it was somebody that I knew by association. I was like, holy, like,
Did he die?
No.
Yeah.
He actually, how was it? He was somebody who had a particular position of responsibility in an organization, and that organization, like, somehow it came back around to him that he was a tyrant and he was insufferable, and it didn't come from her. It came from the people that he had been working with, and it came in such a way that he realized how horrible he was being. And because he was a practicing Buddhist as well, he went to his practice and started chanting to unearth his dark side. And they were able to work it out. And so, like, truly magical.
Yeah.
You are allowed to say, I really hate where I am right now. But it's not always time to break out the blowtorch and just burn shit down.
Right. Yeah. So for me, tell me your question again.
How did you know, or what was the way you found out that it was time to wrap things up? Because you're in the relationship, and if I heard you correctly, what you had said was you already, the marriage was already kind of done, but neither one of you was doing anything about it. So what had you finally get up off your ass?
That's a great question. So, I mean, we had the conversation many times prior to this last conversation. And what really it was for me was I felt like I was in a really good place emotionally, spiritually, financially, that I could, or that I would be fine on my own.
Okay.
And really, my thought process was, even going into having this conversation, because it was a conversation that we had had so many times before, I'm like, it's never changed. So why is it going to change now? So I'm going to have this conversation. This is what's going to happen. And then that's going to be it. So I expected it. I was ready for it. Now, the kind of trickiness in there, I want to say, was, so I had the conversation, and it was the same as it had always been, like, do you want to try and reconnect? Well, yeah, I guess, like, ugh, like,
we're supposed to.
Yeah, like, that makes me feel like, oh, well, I guess, like, oh, well, I'm some great piece of shit that, I guess I want to, like, okay.
Well, I'm so glad I matter so much to you.
Oh my God, seriously. And I mean, this was a 16-year relationship.
Yeah.
So doing the work that I do within myself. So I had learned to read the Akashic records.
Okay.
Because I found out about this, and I'm like, all right, well, there's questions that I want to ask, because I don't get it. Like, I don't understand, like, where did things turn? And there's, like, it takes two. So I know it was also me. So what is my part? Because look, if there's a part that I'm playing in this, I don't want to repeat this.
Right.
So I go in and I ask all the questions about the relationship, and the information that I received was a lot of how I was showing up and what I was not seeing. So with this information, I was like, okay, well, this is new information. These are things that I could change, and this could make a difference, or it could not. But now, because I have this information, I can't just walk away, because then I'm going to have this, oh, well, what if I did these things? What if I said these things?
So just to pause for a second, for viewers or listeners who may not be familiar, the Akashic records are sort of like the filing system, the karmic filing system of the universe. It's sort of the spiritual record hall, the Library of Congress. And there are people who have an ability to tap in and tell you, what you may have been through in previous lifetimes or why this karmic lesson is circling back at this particular time.
Right.
Would that be accurate?
Yeah. So it's the book of life. It's the record of all souls, all past lives, all lives, basically. And so you can receive information only if it is for your highest good at that time. So
it's not like you just walk in and you can look up anything.
Oh, yeah.
It's like you've got to go through the gatekeeper who says, not today.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And I've had radio silence before where they won't give me certain information, or they'll say, no, look at this.
No cheat sheets. That sucks. But that's what I thought the Akashic Records was for. Well, okay. So now I know.
So it really is a cheat sheet though, right? Because think of it this way. If I would have not done that,
you would have
then I wouldn't have known, and I would have had those things come up. What if I would have tried this or said this, or, you know, what if I actually took this perspective? And so, and that's what I didn't want, was to walk away from this, because that was another thing. Like, this was a long relationship, and I thought that this was going to be my husband for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
So like, I don't want to fuck up.
Right.
Right. And like, put
coming
it on
from
me.
the Catholic background.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
This is forever. It's a sin to divorce. And
yeah. Yeah. And
I'm a bad human being.
Yeah. And I mean, I did love him. Like, if he would have said like, yes, I actually this time do want to, you know, X, Y, and Z, and we'll make it work, I would have stayed. Yeah. I would have stayed. Absolutely. 1000%.
But instead 1,000%. It was, well, yeah, okay.
I guess.
Well,
and it was, so when I brought the information to him, I was like, look, like, I told him all about the Akashic Records, right? And so by this point, I'm like, this man probably thinks that I'm fucking out of my mind, right? I'm like doing plant medicine, and I'm like, oh yeah, Akashic Records, like, I got this information. And he's like, okay. So I'm like, this is what I was shown, and this is what I want to do. And I'm asking you to just give me a chance to do this and just see if it makes a difference. And if it doesn't, fine. And if it does, fine.
Yeah.
And he was like, but I thought we decided. I'm like, yeah, we did decide. And now I'm asking you, like, I'm asking you for this, please. He's like, didn't want to say yes, but he was like, all right. And it didn't work.
So it didn't work to save the marriage, but did it make a difference in your relationship?
It made a difference in my relationship with him, you mean?
Yeah, because I mean, from what I know of you, you're still friends.
Yeah. So we are still friends. And no, it didn't make, I believe we would have been friends either way.
Okay.
That was something that we had both wanted prior to, right? It's not like he hated me or I hated him, or there was, you know, we did things to each other.
Right.
It was, you know, one of the things that he continued to say as we were going through it, he's like, I love you. We love each other, but we're not good in a marriage together. Right? It's like, we were roommates. We were great friends. We had conversation. They just we weren't intimate. We weren't, right?
Yeah.
So it came to a point where I think it was probably maybe a month, not even. And like, I turned everything on, right? I was like, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm all in, because if I don't go all in, then I'm still going to have the what ifs. And he just couldn't get there. And he, the one day, came to me, he's like, look, we got to talk. Like, you're doing all the things, and I feel really weird. I can't get back there. I can't get back there. We're too far gone.
Well, and did it serve the purpose for you that you intended?
Absolutely. Yep. Because I went all in. And it was still a no. So I was like, okay, I can walk away saying I did everything in my power to save this, and 100%.
That's awesome. So now what? Like, you both decided that divorcing was the best course of action. How has that affected you and how you live your life moving forward?
So one of the big takeaways from that time in my life, and especially right after, was so being very clear on what it is that I want, what I deserve, right? And not settling, and not what's the word that I'm looking for? Um, Not just basically, well, yeah, settling, taking anything that's like thrown at me, right?
Taking scraps.
Yeah. Yeah. So from that point, I got super, super, super clear on everything that I wanted. I wrote everything down on paper, like characteristics of the man that I wanted, right? Because really, like, I want to have a amazing life partner.
Yeah.
Because I know that I would be one too. So, and I mean, pages, like 3 columns each page, front and back.
Oh,
like,
wow.
Yeah, like a lot.
All out.
Oh, for sure. And so I would sit. So when I moved out of my home, we sold our home. I moved into my place, and I would sit on the balcony every day, and I called it turning on my beacon, right? I would sit and I would feel the feeling of being with that partner, perfect partner, what that relationship is like, right? And just beautiful feeling. And so about 3 weeks later, I met a man, and it was pretty wild because getting to know him. So we had started dating, and maybe a month or 2 months into it, whatever it was, I found that paper, and I'm going through it, and I'm like, my mind was blown. I'm like, this man is everything on here except for a millionaire, which we can work on, right? We can work on that.
It's a missing, but it's workable.
And like obsessed with fitness and nutrition. Also something that you can work on, right? Okay. I was like, fuck yeah, right? And so this was what I believed, and after months and months had seemed to be the person that I was looking for, or waiting for, whatever you'd like to call it, desiring.
I guess it's really funny that you say that, because the way I found my second husband was kind of the same way. I'm like, I got chills. I had gone to a spiritual conference at the Broward County Convention Center and went and saw a psychic doing a presentation. And she was also an Akashic Records reader. And I had no clue what that was at the time.
Yeah.
And I scheduled to have a tarot reading with her, and it ended up going from an hour to 3 hours long.
Wow.
Yeah. She's still somewhere in Miami. Every now and then I see her on social media. And she suggested that I go to a Target or a drugstore and buy a greeting card, 2. One that I would choose to give to my love, and one that I would want to receive from my love. And on the inside of the card that I would give, write all of the qualities in him. And here's the twist. On the card that I wanted to receive, all of the qualities in me that I wanted to be appreciated. And when Marcelo, my second husband, showed up, he was really like all of those things, except he was not 6'2". And like
we can't work on that.
He was an illegal immigrant at the time as well, but I didn't know I needed to ask for somebody who had status. So one of the things that comes up for me is like, you wrote 3 full pages front and back. It sounds like you were pretty exhaustive. Mine was on a tiny little greeting card, so I had plenty more space.
You need a big jumbo card next time.
Yeah. So, I completely lost that train of thought, but I'm going to pick it up from where I am called to. It's like, even when we do that, after 17 years of being married to this amazing man, my second marriage was 17 years. Okay. It ended up not working. And he and I are still friends. I really value his friendship, our relationship. I just spoke with him a couple of days ago. He's still in my phone as my emergency contact, just because I'm single and, hey, you never know.
Yeah.
What do you think it is that there's a connection in the universe somewhere. Well, tell us. He wasn't a millionaire. He's not into fitness. You're having this amazing relationship and this fantastic experience. You've created this yourself. Now what?
Now what happened?
Yes. Because you've been with John for how long?
October. So in a couple months would be 2 years.
Okay.
So a couple things happen. So one of my also core values is growth. I'm slightly obsessed with it in every area, right? Physical, mental, spiritual. And that's not something that I could or would ever stop. So I've continued to be on this path. For the past several months, that's something that he has struggled with. Now, what I have learned over the past couple days is, yes, I was clear about all of the things that I wanted and I got them. And there's also deeper seated things inside of me that I was not aware of, that I learned of this weekend. Things from my childhood, my teenage years. So, for example, we've had this experience with, or I've had this experience with this person, and having this experience was bringing up feelings in me that I had no idea why I was having. So it was a woman, and she doesn't like me, which is fine. I don't give a shit normally, but why do I care so much? And so what I found was going all the way back to 7th grade, the first time that I can remember having this feeling.
Oh, wow.
Was there was a boy that I liked, and it was between myself and another girl. And he chose the other girl.
Oh, wow.
Right? So I was feeling like I was in competition, which I was. We both knew, like, oh, he's going to pick one of us, right?
Yeah.
And I was the one that was not picked. Now, when I realized, okay, this is the same feeling, and I looked at every single relationship in my life up until this point, even friendships, there was always that.
Oh, wow.
Whether it was, for example, a best friend that I had in high school and her boyfriend had cheated on her. And I was there and I saw it and I told her, and she chose him over me, and we were no longer friends.
Wow.
When I owned a CrossFit, one of my best friends at that time, she wanted to coach for me. So I trained her. She became an amazing coach. And then she chose to shove it up my ass and go and open her own gym. And so, like, even in my marriage, before my marriage, before we were dating, he had chosen somebody else over me. So in every single relationship, I saw this pattern. And so once I became aware of that, I'm like, this is why I care. Because this person is so important to you that I'm like internally, like red flag, like freaking the fuck out. Like I have this beautiful relationship and I'm going to be the one that's not chosen again. So I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy of this. I'm never going to have anything that lasts.
Wow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's an interesting place to land. Being able to see the source, does that help you figure out how to process it, or what next? What do you do now?
Yeah. So when I realized that, it did help me understand why I did feel like that and look at it from a different perspective. And I mean, really, when you know why you feel some way, right, it does allow you to have a process about it. For some people, process doesn't mean that they let it go, right? And so this past weekend, I did a lot of work and learned a lot of things about myself and my childhood and like even more competition. So like, all right, so let me back up for a second. When I learned that, I was like, okay, great, I should be able to let it go. But I still had that like, ooh, right? Like, okay, why? So going back even further, when my little sister was born and my competing for attention with my father, which, and there was no, right. And something that I've learned is like a lot of this is not, of course, it wasn't intentional of my dad. Right. Like she's a baby, she's a newborn baby, and I'm 5 years old. And it used to be just me. And now it's this little baby and daddy's princess. And right. But it continued as she grew, and she was daddy's girl. Right. She was the good one because she saw the shit that I put my parents through and she didn't want to do that. So literally, like, she was the good one. She was the angel and I was like the rebel.
Yeah.
So once I found that, that was like the key. That was the freeing of it all.
That's really key. Because I think like one of the things that I'm getting is you've had this experience and you see the source of the experience, and it's fantastic to understand where it comes from. But then the next question is, we hear this idea that we're the creator of our own universe. And it's like, but how am I creating that? Like, I'm not manipulating people. I'm not making people choose. I'm not forcing these kinds of things to happen. So what does it take? Because for many of the people who might be listening or watching, they're having an experience of, okay, great, here we go again. I create my life, la 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 la. But how?
Yeah.
How does that make a difference?
Yeah. So what I've learned, and it's very interesting because so Erin and I were talking about intuition before, right? And like divine timing and how things will just show up like at that divine timing, right? And they're just like light switches, like, oh my God. Or the synchronicities, like, okay, thank you for the sign, I get it. So something that I had listened to yesterday, I started listening to it, and the first thing that this doctor said, so she's a doctor of neuroscience, but she also is very deep into spirituality, the universe. She's written a book called The Source, and it kind of ties all of it together, like all of the secrets, and it's super cool.
Awesome.
So one of the things that she had said was, she's like, you are attracting your relationships based on your wounded self. And most people don't know what those wounds are, right? So at that moment, it was just like, it wasn't even a light switch. It was like an explosion around my body. It was like, I was like, okay, so let's look deeper at this. Right? I was like, okay, what are the similarities of this relationship and my marriage?
Wow.
And that was like, I'm going to say devastating, because it was something that I didn't realize that I was choosing again. I had no idea that things were going to shift in the way that they did. And it wasn't something that I was consciously choosing to create. It's what I didn't want.
Right.
And it was like, oh, well, I broke that, right? And not knowing why I even had that in my marriage in the first place. So seeing the ties there. So now it's like, okay, so now you know what that is, what that wounding is, right? Attracting somebody that isn't stable within themselves.
Yes.
Right. So like with my ex-husband, when we moved to Florida, he came out with like, I'm not happy with anything in my life, my job, being here, where we live. I have no joy at all. Right. And I took that as like, oh my God, it's me. Like, it's me. And like, it wasn't me at all whatsoever. Like, of course, I mean, it takes two. I'm sure I played some type of part in that. But when somebody has depression, it's not triggered by a person. It's not brought on by a person.
Right.
And it's not something that somebody else can fix either.
Right.
Like, you have to do that work yourself. And so I did everything within my power to help him, right? Everything. We did many, many, many things. And he just couldn't get there. Right. And so my experience over this past weekend now was this person that I love, that is all of the things that we've been having, all of these things come up over the past really like couple months, especially the past few weeks, that now he is in a place to where he's not happy with himself. Right. And so, verbatim, this is not you. Like, this is not the problem. I am the problem. Like, I need to figure it out. And so in that moment also, I was like, why am I attracting this? Why am I experiencing this again? Because 2 times in a row, right? Like total shift. Like, what?
Yeah, completely. Well, so Danielle and I have had many conversations over the couple of years that we've known each other. And so she is intimately familiar with my former work situation. And I don't think I've talked about it a lot on the podcast, partially because of the idea that like, it's not her. It's me and my calling it into my space. And I like, it's really challenging talking to a therapist when you come from the stance of it's my responsibility, because they're like, no, you were abused. And it's like, it is true that I was, mistreated as a child, and there were certain experiences that I have. And it's like this whole tangle of, but I wouldn't be experiencing this if you weren't in my space. But I called you into my space specifically so I could experience this.
Right.
And it's a little bit of a mind fuck when you start to get to that level. So about 2 months ago, like the last job that I was in, I was there for 7 years. And I knew pretty early on that my boss was basically a giant replica of my mom. The conversations we would have, the arguments we would have, the disagreements, the kinds of things, the way we would interact with each other. I was going to say the way she treated me, but it's really not even that, because I was just as Erin to her as I was Erin to my mom. And, you can go into the whole zodiac. Oh, I'm an Aquarius and she's a Scorpio, and that's why. And it's like, there is a level of truth to the personality thing.
Yeah.
But there's also the whole karmic freight train that's behind each person. And when you think about something along the lines of soul contracts and people coming into life to help each other figure things out, I had an experience 2 months ago where my boss, bless her heart, came into my office and was just tearing into me about, well, she started by making a request that was a very backhanded request, because I knew it was a request for me to tattle on my coworkers, but it was really her saying, I know you left early yesterday. And my normal way of being, remember, to my subconscious, this is my mother.
Right.
And so my heart starts beating faster and my hands are shaking and I'm freaking out because I think I'm going to get beat. I just got caught, like whatever. It's insane what we do when we go there.
Yeah.
And it was about 10 minutes into the conversation, and she can see she's got me cornered. Energetically, she's smirking like a cat that's, got the bird right where she wants him. And she says to me, "You know why nobody ever stops by your office, don't you?" And at that point, I froze and I was like, I've heard this before. Now, I'm going to back up for a sec before I finish. I've been doing 6 months of Joe Dispenza meditations. I've been chanting Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, practicing Nichiren Buddhism for 24 years. I've done all kinds of personal development, plant medicine ceremonies. I've been digging in, like you, to uncover why this shitstorm has been my life. And it's one of those things where to try to untangle the Christmas lights of your life is not an easy thing. It is not for the faint of heart. So the fact that you're actually, if you're listening this far in, congratulations. So as I'm sitting here looking at this woman who is saying to me, "You know why nobody ever stops by your office?" I have this flashback to when I'm 12 years old, and my parents had moved us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida to Gainesville, Florida. Halfway through my freshman year of high school, like the most sensitive time for a teenage girl. We go from this metropolitan city to this podunk town. The only thing there is the University of Florida. Like, that's it. And when I'm talking with the guidance counselor about what I'm going to do to replace advanced placement science, she recommends concert chorus. I enjoy singing. It was nice, but it really wasn't nice. It wasn't. I enjoyed the experience for what it was. But 2 months after we moved there, I come home from school and I'm crying and I throw myself on the bed, and my mom comes in and she's being very motherly, which is weird. And she says, "Oh, honey, what's wrong? How can I help you? How can I support you?" And I'm like, "I don't have any friends. Nobody likes me, blah, 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 blah." And my mom comes out with, "Well, it's because you're such a bitch." And I just, I'm 12, wow. 13, 12, 13, freshman, high school.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So I flash back to this. I see my mother saying this to me, and then I look at my boss and I go, "Oh, I figured it out. It's not me, it's you." It's like, this was, I kept calling this abuse into my life because I really had no sense of my value. You were talking about being unworthy and undervaluing yourself, and really just bending over backwards to make somebody else happy who has no interest in being happy. They don't even understand that they are unhappy. And so it's like two things. One, then I can see, like at that moment, my heart settled down, my hand stopped shaking. The conversation went on for another 20 minutes, but it was mostly her saying things to try to get me back to that space. And I was just like, and she said, "Do you have any questions? You need any clarification?" I'm like, "No." And she kept trying to, and I couldn't be hooked after that.
Yeah.
And it's not like, for somebody who's listening, you might think, "Well, that's really nice, Erin, but how the hell do I get there?" Yeah. Well, you start reading books like The Source. You start connecting with people who are a little bit more mindful. You listen to meditations, or you do affirmations. You start looking for the patterns in your life. Landmark is a fantastic place to go for some of the training that's not quite as on the woo-woo end, but it's also very scientifically based on the psychological aspects. Because one thing that I loved about Landmark is they say that every single human being on the face of the planet, by the time they get done with their teenage years, has made 3 major decisions. The first of which is, I'm not something enough, which for me was, I'm not smart enough. And that decision is made by the time you're like 6. So now here I am trying to outsmart everyone and everything because I feel like I'm not smart enough. And you can't be smart enough to get past I'm not smart enough.
Right. When you believe you're not smart enough.
Because this shit keeps moving the marker.
Right.
So for those people who are like, well, that sounds really great for you, how the hell do I start? You're watching or listening to this particular episode. And so it's time for you to take a look and see, like, what signs have you been getting? Who's been recommending books to you? Are there videos that keep showing up in your feed and you don't know where the hell it came from? Start paying attention to those signs.
Totally. The videos on YouTube. I open it and I'm like, okay, thank you.
Sometimes it comes out of left field, right?
Oh yeah. That's the one that with You're Attracting from Your Wounded Self play. Oh my God. And it was an hour and a half. I consumed it like.
What else would you like to offer our listeners or our viewers around this whole idea? Well, first of all, is there anything else about the story that you feel like you need to say to be complete?
So the place where I am now, it's very interesting because, so before we started this show, Erin looked at me and she said, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually I am. I'm pretty good." And I mean, it's not only that's happening in my life, right? I have, my sister just had a baby and the baby is in the hospital and, medical things are happening with that. And one of my dogs, Jackson, he's 12 years old because he's very emotional and loves this man, has had several seizures over the past, a couple days. So it's like, I feel like I keep trying to stand up and I keep getting knocked down. And at the same time, I know that it's going to be fine because of the things that I've realized. And I'm in a good place. He is in a good place. And really, there's awareness there and there's learning. And I know that really this was okay, you thought that you were where you needed to be with doing the things that you needed to do. And you still have some more work to do. So here are your next steps. So while, yes, it's painful because it's the person that I thought I was going to be with for a very long time, I'm also, I'm going to say, looking forward to a new beginning instead of sitting in what could have been or what I thought could have been, daydreaming about it. It's like, okay, no looking back. Yes, hindsight, take the lessons and figure out where that pattern came from. Right. But also super clear and no choosing from the wounded self. Heal the wounded self so that you're choosing from your worthiness, from your desires.
Super powerful. And one thing that I might add is we don't know what the current is preparing us for. And so while sometimes it sucks because you think like you found the right person or you don't know why you're in the shitty job or you thought things were going amazing or your whole world is upside down, it's always in preparation of what's next because there's not ever not going to be a what's next.
Right. Unless you choose to not do or be here for what's next.
Well, but even then, karmically speaking, like Einstein says, energy is neither created nor destroyed. And so the little sparks that give us life, they're going to keep going someplace because isn't that what the Akashic Records is? It ties together all of the journeys that you've been on. So it's even a lie that you tell yourself that if you kill yourself in this lifetime, that means it's going to be over. Because it's like you just basically put a pause on that struggle bus. You're like, no, I'm not going to take this one. I'm going to take the next one.
Right.
How do you know it's not going to be worse?
Yeah. Oh, God.
Just saying.
Yeah. So don't off yourself.
I don't remember who I was having a conversation with, but they were saying that many of the people who have survived suicide attempts say that the moment they jumped off the bridge or pulled the trigger or did the thing, they realized it was a bad call. And so if most of the people who survived think that, how many people who ended up being successful realized that, but, past the point of no return? Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like, talk to somebody if that is a place that you're in, because it's never not for nothing.
Right. Well, and really, yeah. It's like all of the things that we go through, right? Being in that bad place. I was having this conversation with a girlfriend last night. All of the awareness, right, that I have around these things, and similar situation for her. And she was sharing with me her patterns that she had realized and worked through. I'm like, man, for people that just don't have any awareness about it at all and just keep experiencing the same thing over and over and over and don't think that there's any freedom there or that this is just the way that life is. It's like, no, you actually are the creator. And you also have to, like you had said, like you have to look. So like take a snapshot. If it's relationship that you struggle with, if it's business, if it's whatever, like what do you see constantly showing up? What is the feeling? Go back to your childhood. Where do I remember experiencing that feeling first? Right? Try and find where it came from. Because really when you find that, that's where you're going to find the freedom from that. And that's where things will start to change.
Absolutely true. That's well spoken. They say ignorance is bliss. Ignorance can be bliss because when you start to try to figure out the causal chain, it can become maddening. It really can be frustrating because it's not always clear where to go next. My experience has been usually when I'm struggling the most, it's because I am surrendering the least. I'm not trusting the universe.
Yeah.
I'm not trusting my process.
Yep. Yeah, that resonates a lot.
If I say after 24 years of practicing Nichiren Buddhism, and Nichiren Buddhism is the environment is a reflection of the self. If I really say I believe that and I'm looking at something I don't like, and it's a reflection of the self, but I refuse to look at myself, then do I really believe what I say I believe? So, it's, like I said, not for the faint of heart. And I think it's one of the more fun journeys because I tried the whole ignorance thing and
I think we all have at some point.
I just ran myself into exhaustion.
Yeah.
Because after a little while, that's when I started thinking about, I don't want to be here anymore.
Right. Yeah,
it's just too hard.
There's no freedom in ignorance, really. I mean, if there's pain and it's the continuous cycle, like, is there any freedom in a cycle? It's like being on a hamster wheel. No.
Yeah.
Like you're just going to keep experiencing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So run the wheel with your ignorance. I mean, how long can you run it for? How long do you want to run it for? It's exhausting.
Yeah, truly. Is there anything else that you would like to share? Any words of wisdom? Any tools that you'd like to recommend?
Oh, I mean, really, this is stuff I could talk about for hours on end. So
we can do another episode.
That may not be the best question to end with.
Okay, to wrap things up, what would you like to say for people to be complete? Or
so really, one of the reasons why I share my story with divorce. So prior to really today, I share my story with divorce with women to basically really show them like, look, like that's not all that there is. If you're not happy, if you feel like you deserve more, if you find yourself questioning like, is this it? Like, no, that's not it. right? You're powerful. You deserve what you desire, and you desire it for a reason, and you are worthy. And so now it's like the continuation of that story. So like get clear. Look inside of you. Like, where do you have pain still? Because really, yes, you do create everything.
Mm-hmm.
And just as I created this relationship that followed, that was absolutely beautiful, there's always, everything is always serving you, right? You're always learning from everything.
Always.
So for this to happen, I could be sitting here and I could be crying and I could be broken, sitting in what I wish what was, but instead, right, I'm going back to my power of, okay, this is now what I need to do. And thank you for this experience, because I grew so much from it, so much.
Yeah.
There's nothing that I regret from it.
Yeah. It's beautiful. And it's really true. I have a close friend who went through one of those really powerful and amazing but brief love affairs. Like, met somebody, totally connected on super deep levels. One of those things that was just not meant to be. And it turned his life upside down to show him exactly where he had been settling. Because he thought, the perfect partner isn't out there for me.
Mm-hmm.
But now he knows that's not true.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So settling is rarely ever a good option.
Right.
Because you just get left unfulfilled. If the entire universe is a giant buffet, why are you going to eat the stuff that you don't like and ignore the stuff that you do?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
That's so true.
You get to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool. Well, Danielle, I love chatting with you. And
Same.
I really appreciate you sharing so much of yourself, like so vulnerably and so authentically.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So, this is The Secret of My Success. We have been exploring what it means to live a fulfilling life. I'm your host, Erin Currin. Until next time,